Three, two, one. Welcome in to Take Command with Kedric Golston, filling in for Logan Paulsen. I'm Grant Paulsen. We do this after every single Commanders game. In the minutes after the game ends, we give you a quick reaction pod. And in this case, with Logan on the road, traveling back, Ked fills in to hang out with me to discuss what we just saw. Of course, Kedric played a decade in the league with the then Redskins. And Kedric, for the first time in 10 weeks, for the first time in 9 games, Washington is a winner. The 8-game losing streak is over. They improved to 4-10 with a 29-21 win over the New York Giants in the Meadowlands.
Yeah, I mean, the first quarter, went as scripted, right? I'm sitting here, have done a bunch of post-game shows after losses, and I'm getting excited about the win. And that excitement didn't last too long, and it was a game of ups and downs and an inconsistent play. But hats off to the Commanders, Coach Quinn. A win is a win. It's hard to do in this business, and they've been searching for one for 8 weeks.
They certainly have. And, it's one of those things when you get to this point in the season, no matter what you do, people are going to be annoyed, right? And I get that on the outside. Every time I was tweeting something positive today, everyone's yelling at me about how it doesn't matter. And, that ideally, you lose this game and you don't fall down in the draft order. But we talked about this recently, you and I, on this pod, and I've talked about it with Logan. They needed a win just to kind of confirm that some of the things they're doing are the right things to be doing, just within the walls, because there's only so many weeks in a row you can play and lose before people check out. And then people not only start to lose jobs from a playing standpoint, but who knows what kind of uprooting of whatever cultural foundation was laid happens. And I do feel good for the staff that puts in the 75, 80-hour weeks. I feel good for the players that are putting their body on the line. You saw Laramie Tunsil come out of the game with an injury, come back in the game today in a lost season, already eliminated from the playoffs to try to gut through what he was dealing with. He would come back out of the game. But, these guys are putting their bodies on the line. They're grinding. They're going through a long season here, answering tough questions. And closing in on 3 months since they last won a game, this means a lot to them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you just touched on it there, Grant. I mean, Laramie Tunsil, all-pro type player, consecutive Pro Bowls, quote-unquote, I'm not going to say a lost season, but a season where they know they're not going to the postseason, nothing to play for. He comes back into the game, right? You see Von Miller, another first-ballot Hall of Famer out there competing in a season where, like you said, some fans would say, hey, it doesn't matter, we don't need to win the game, so on and so forth. That speaks to the culture that Dan Quinn is creating in his staff, because you have proven veterans in this league that are still going out there competing, playing and play out because they want to win a football game. And to that, talking about culture, you have to learn how to win football games in this league. Right. And so if you just start going out there and being sloppy, so on and so forth, then your players are going to figure out how to lose it. Now, it was sloppy at the end, but that being said, they won a football game, and it's a whole lot easier to coach off a tape after a win than it is a loss, right? Because everybody's feeling good about themselves. Now you can go in and really hammer out those details of things that can't happen when you play a good football team.
Yeah, to that point, there were stretches where I felt like they were the decidedly better team. I don't know that I feel that way in the big picture overall. Like, it wasn't overly clean. They gave up more first downs than they gained. They went 3 for 11 on third down. They got outgained by 44 yards. They got outsnapped, and time of possession was about even after they got to get the ball back and kneel down for the final minute and change, essentially. But, you add everything up because of a punt return special teams touchdown, because of a short field to get a field goal at the end of the half on defense where they played really complimentary football. They end up winning the game. But how do you parse up, what was kind of ugly? They had 4 penalties on their first 11 snaps in this game. They ended up with 11 penalties for 70 yards. They were trying to salt the game away late, and they turned it over 2 times with fumbles. This was a game where it felt like 2 bad teams were playing to me, Ked. It wasn't like one was playing a lot better than the other. It felt like the Giants, who punted and kicked a couple times on fourth when they probably should have gone for it, dropped a touchdown pass. They were almost just worse than Washington was for stretches. There were some good things like the Terry touchdown, Bill running hard. We'll get into those. But how do you make sense of it feeling a little bit sometimes like the Giants were just worse than Washington was?
Grant, you've been doing this a long time. Sometimes you can't make sense of these games, right? It's a divisional game. I've been a part of a lot of them late in the year. For every negative thing you can say about the fumbles, right? The defense had fourth down stop, right? 4 plays inside the 5, right? And New York doesn't get in. You know what I mean? So there's a ton of positives even with the negatives, right? And the most important thing in this business right here, right now, as we have this conversation, is they won the football game. Right?
Yeah,
Obviously, there's some warts. There's some things that have to be cleaned up. There's some things that you cannot do and be a championship caliber team. You don't play like you played today and beat the leaders, the Detroit Lions, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Los Angeles Rams, the New England Patriots. You don't beat those football teams playing like you do today. But at the same token, you wasn't playing them today, and
right.
you made enough plays when you needed to in order to win a football game, right? And so as we all know, right, the coaches know that it wasn't clean, the players know that it wasn't clean, but those guys are going to be able to enjoy a flight back to Washington Dulles, eat some good cheeseburgers, some peanut M&Ms, and they'll be able to have that energy to kind of finish out this year on a good note.
Peanut M&Ms is a good pull. I want to circle back to that at some point because it sounds to me like maybe that was a go-to for you on the flights. Kedric Golston in for Logan Paulsen. Grant Paulsen hanging out with you on Take Command. The Commanders just finished off a win, 29-21 over the Giants. I guess that the discouraging thing for me was just to come out with all those penalties. Felt flat. But they turned the game around at the end of the half. And in the second quarter, and this is not something that has been the case this year. I always say, Ked, and I'm sure you had coaches that harped on this, but I really believe if you trace back the last few minutes of each half, oftentimes that discrepancy is as big as anything in football, turnovers or any other metric you're going to use to try to figure out if you win the game or not. And the way that they finished out the half, getting back-to-back scores, the 63-yard punt return with 105 to play to go up 19-7, like that's at that time, that's a 13-7 game when Lane rips that off. They miss the extra point. Then they get the pick, and they're right back down the field, and they're able to kick a 42-yard field goal 2 plays later. So you basically stole 9 points there. Instead of it being 13-7 into the half, it's 22-7. Well, there's the difference in the ball game. They only scored one more time. They got outscored the rest of the way. I thought that sequence ended up being the difference in this game because when you look at it, if you're looking for, like I said, net yards or third downs or yards per play or, who did a better job throwing the football or who won the turnover battle, like they lost almost all of those categories in this game, but they still won because of the hidden touchdown on teams and stealing that late 3 points with their defensive takeaway in return from Mikey Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, the way you handle the end of games and the end of halves is underrated, right? And we heard it for years, and it's almost cliche because people talk about situational football, right? Situational football. Well, this is the second week in a row the Giants have given up a punt return, right? And when this team was winning football games, we always pointed back to the special teams making a play. Well, they made one today, and when you return a kick, when there's a big play on special teams, like it is really a dagger, right? For them to score, I don't know what the statistics are, but to go 63 yards, punt return, then like you said, get the pick. But the way they handled that, you talk about a huge swing, right? So the Giants were looking to get the ball back. Actually, I take that back. The Giants thought they was going to score. Defense stops them, right?
Yeah.
Giants forced Washington to punt the ball, right? They come out there, the Washington defense forces the Giants to punt. We score, right? And then, like you said, that's the difference in the game. So, in the halves, in the games, underrated. And when you really look at it, it really does decide because more times than not, a lot of teams like to steal a possession there coming out of the second half. So, um, that was huge, and it was the difference in the game.
I thought there was some good fortune at times, too. Younghoe Koo's had a terrible year, got cut by the Falcons early this season, bounced around. He missed 2 field goals in this game from pretty makeable distances. I know it's cold and it's outdoors, but 51 and 52 yards, I think they were, which you see made in this league outside all the time. And then also, lest we forget, when they get down the field inside the 5 and Jackson Dart leaves with an injury, Jameis has to run on the field for that goal line situation. Dart rushes back out there kind of right before the gun on 4th down. And throws an incompletion that was a near pick. But who knows if they have 3 plays without having to go to a backup quarterback there who's cold, what that looks like. But let's dive into each side of the ball. I'll start with the offense because I think there's actually some good stuff to talk about here. Bill got his opportunity. You never know in this league, Kedric. You got to stay ready. Krosky Merritt is supplanted by Chris Rodriguez at running back. Rodriguez, we've been harping and praising how well he's run. Well, he gets banged up this week. He's missing practice time. He ends up being a game-time decision. The thought is he's going to go, but he's not going to start. We find out today. I was a little surprised he's not going to play at all. So Bill gets another crack at this thing. They went heavy with McNichols early. He ended up averaging less than a yard per carry, 9 carries for 6 yards. I would have liked to have seen some of those 9 given to Bill, but hard to argue with 18 attempts as he was able to run for 96 yards, over 5 a pop, scored a touchdown, had a 16-yard score in this game. This was the best Bills look since September. Maybe since that, I guess, to be clear, like the Chargers game in early October, he really balled out. But he looked fast. He looked like he had juice. To me, he looked like he just, was a little fresher than a lot of guys on the field because he hasn't played as much in recent weeks maybe. And you can see the speed, Ked. I mean, you coach high school ball. When you get a guy in there who's got a different gear, you kind of feel it. And I think that happened today with Bill. You can kind of see why people were so interested in him, including this building and these coaches at the beginning of the year. This was a really impressive performance.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, he's still a young player, still developing player, but when he definitely has that, I'm not going to say change of pace, but he has a different gear, different style of running. He hits the holes a lot faster. Maybe he's gotten his second win, and he's explosive. He's shown that at times. And maybe earlier on in October, we were leaning on him a little too much. And maybe he got a little banged up or dinged, and maybe his legs were sore. That's neither here nor there. The main thing with him is ball security, right? Now, he put one on the ground today. We recovered it, so it wasn't a turnover. But in this game, right, like you can – running backs, there's a ton of them, right? They're talented, they're explosive, right? But if you won't hold on to the ball and you won't pass protect, then you will find yourself with limited opportunities, right? So hopefully he can continue to learn ball security and continue to pick up the pass protection game so that he can continue to develop and get those opportunities and show everybody what he's really talented and good at.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, it's not the first time this year. He fumbled consecutive weeks against the Bears and against the Chargers. So this was like his 3rd fumble of the season. And they did go right back to him. I think his next carry was 11, but it's something to monitor for sure because for the number of carries he's had this year, it's not a lot. To have already fumbled 3 times is a little bit alarming. What's the difference in some of these games? How much of this is like bad Giants, do you think, where they were literally dead last in the NFL stopping the run? Like they're 32nd. They give up about 5 a pop. Nobody else in the league is giving up more yards per carry. It's like all week long, me and all the people that dive into this are screaming, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. And they did the whole first half. They came out and gutted the Giants for well over 100 rushing yards all purpose between Mariota, McNichols, and Bill. But he also was better. Like my boys are texting me on my little Commanders thread with friends. And they're like, man, Bill looks good again, or Bill's looks great. I'm like, he does, totally, 100%. But I wonder how much of that is like the Giants are going to give you some lanes too. What did you see?
You said it best, right? Like, obviously, the Giants have been poor all year in rush defense, right? And so they ran the ball like we thought they should, right? Like, at times, this team has proven that they can have a really productive, explosive run game. And so they did what they were supposed to do in the run game, given the matchup, right? And that's what you're supposed to do. It would be more concerning if they only rushed for 32 yards on, 20 attempts or something like that, because what New York has shown all year is that they've been poor in the rush defense. But earlier on, I thought them being committed to it working. I think at one point they were, in the first half, they were averaging like 9.3 yards a carry. It then simplified the coverages from Mariota. He was able to get, make some explosive plays in the passing game, and that's contributed to their ability to run the football.
Kedric Golston in for Logan Paulsen. I'm Grant Paulsen. This is Take Command. Mariota ran for 43 yards in this game. He's been super effective as a rusher this year. I didn't think he threw it great, but I also don't know how indicative like his accuracy is on 10 for 19 for 211. There was a bad drop by Debo on a play that would have come back for penalty early. There were a couple of low percentage deep shots he took on third down too. Like, to me, kid, it didn't feel like they left a lot of meat on the bone in the passing game in terms of misses. He hits on the big 36-yarder to Ben Sinnott we can talk about. The 51-yarder to Terry was read out well. Beautiful ball into space. He was wide open. I thought the throw at the beginning of the game was fantastic to Noah Brown, who got hurt again. I mean, he's just constantly hurt. I feel for the guy, but he's just made of glass, and I think the experiment's got to end. But 28-yard catch to Noah Brown. That was a perfect ball extending the play, and then he hit on 19 to Bates at one point. They had some big-time explosives, man. Just 10 completions and over 210 yards in this game. That's pretty impressive.
There you go. It's efficient. And that's the word that came to mind, especially early on in the game. They were really efficient at what they were doing. You know what I mean? Mariota is a guy that has played a lot of football. He's a guy you want on your team given the situation that we got. To me, he seems a lot like a rhythm passer, you know what I mean, where he can just kind of get in the flow and start slinging it around. Yes, he's going to overthrow some balls and things of that nature, but that being said, he was super efficient. I thought it gave, at times, the defense was able to settle down because of the way the offense called the game with running the ball and being able to take those shots down the field. And that's where you kind of get the 10 completions for the 200+ yards that 20 yards of completion, and that's winning football in this league.
Kedric, the other guy on offense that I wanted to draw some attention to, because he's just had one of those years, man, where it seems like whether it's positive or negative, he's constantly, everything that happens is under a microscope, has been Terry McLaurin. And he made a really nice catch on the sideline. The way he fights through a tackle at the 10-yard line, kind of smelling the end zone, is an elite trait that he's got as a physical kind of warrior of a receiver. He had the 51-yarders, the second longest catch of his season that he scores on. He goes 3 for 69. At halftime, it was one grab for 3 yards, and he only got 2 more real catchable targets after that. But he makes one of those plays, it feels like most weeks, where you go, you see, this is why he and his agent thought he was worth all the money. This is why when he's not out there, this is a different, worse team. I don't know how many guys on this squad run the route he does, get open to the extent that he did, make that catch, and then run through a tackle there. Like, I don't know if there's someone else who does that on that play. That's what he gives you. It's that explosive, take the lid off ability that they've been lacking.
I mean, whenever he plays, he makes one of those plays. I mean, I've never seen a guy looks like there's magnets on the field and he has them in his shoes, right? Because his feet are always down. It's not even close. There was some talk that maybe he bobbled that one. That's neither here nor there. You can slow anything down and realize the ball moves when you catch it. I mean, this is a thing, right? Like, player holds out, gets injured, season isn't going well. They want to blame everything on the player, right? I understand that from the fan perspective, but since the moment Terry got here, in whatever year that was, I just remember him taking the top off the Philadelphia Eagles in back-to-back series, right? You talk about a guy that's done nothing wrong. He is a speedster guy with a quote-unquote sports hernia, soft tissue issue, right? He's probably more frustrated than anybody could ever be because it's a guy from the outside looking in that's always in shape, works his tail off, and so he's injured and he's trying to get healthy and he's trying to fight through it. I mean, for all intents and purposes, there could have been a lot of guys that shut it down, like we talked about earlier with Tunsil and Von Miller. He's still a guy that just re-up, got a new contract, but he's still out there competing with his teammates because he cares, right? And so, hopefully he can stay healthy for the rest of the year. He can have a off season where there's no distractions. Sometimes the contract thing was going to happen, right? He's going out there. He's proven himself. That's the business side of football. And he did it in the off season when business should be taken care of. So don't hold that against him. Don't hold that against him. No different than anybody else, right? I just think sometimes we view things through different lenses. And so we come in there with already an opinion based off of how we feel about something versus just looking at it. Star receiver, really productive receiver is injured. Therefore, he's gonna, for lack of a better term, struggle or not be what he's been in the past right now in this moment.
Yeah, and they're going to have a rebuilt weaponry collection, I think, around him too. Like it didn't work this year. We'll see if they re-up with Debo, who's a free agent at year's end. I don't know if you have a strong take on that, but I thought he was great early. It hasn't been as productive here of late, but if it's going to take 17 to 20 million dollars, I probably go a little twitchier and more explosive and younger there. Because as he gets older with his injury history, I don't think he's going to be more durable. But they're going to have to rework the receiver position around Terry. I think you're kind of moving on from and probably no longer going to tap into Noah Brown. You've got Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey coming back, but they might have two guys in their top three ahead of them that are new, whether you draft or you sign those players. So for Jaden Daniels, this offseason is going to be critical to get everybody on the field together. How much have we heard about time on task, time on the grass, getting everybody in the same page, basically? Well, if you've got maybe two new starting receivers and 11 personnel, kid, I mean, it's going to be a huge offseason ahead. But in Terry's presumed final season here in DC next year, based on just getting the 1-year extension, essentially, I know he's under contract beyond that. He could have a huge year and maybe stay. But it looks to me like if he could finish strong going into the offseason, to your point, he could come back playing for money again where he could have a monster 2026. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
No doubt about it. That's just what he's shown, right? You know what I mean? I listen to your show all the time, right? And y'all always talk about the back of the baseball card, right? At some point, you go back to the back of the baseball card, and that's what I think Terry is. And we always look at these things in a vacuum. All year last year, and I don't want to harp on last year, but I'm just trying to give some perspective to my statement. It was all about Jaden doing those early morning walkthroughs with the virtual reps and all that kind of stuff, right? And he did that so that he could go out on the field and have those reps with his guys, right? So this skill position group has kind of been an influx for injuries, for whatever reason, since the offseason, right? They've never just had everybody there week in, week out, day in and day out. So as an offense, they haven't been able to get those reps. And Jaden has told you, based off of his performances, and I know he's not playing, but he likes reps. He likes them virtually. He likes them, he likes them out there in practice, right? And that's what we talked about weeks ago is everybody only looks at players' availability on game day, and really, and that's really important. But when you have players that are hurt week in and week out, over time, those reps you lose in practice end up kind of showing themselves in the game. And like we said, Terry's been in and out, Debo's been in and out, so on and so forth. But no, it's not going to surprise me at all when Terry has a monster year next year, because that's what he's shown year in and year out. With not as good a quarterback play that he's presumably going to have with Jaden next year.
Ben Sinnott caught a ball. It happened in real life in 2025, the year of our Lord. Ben Sinnott, his only target of the game, which is inexcusable, and I think that that's just an outrage, by the way. And a elimination already having happened, lost season, December game. The tight end you drafted in the second round in his first ever outing without Zach Ertz playing got one target in this game. Again, I would have lost all the money on that. But that target came late. It was heavy personnel like I love. They take a deep shot down the field, play action. They come biting like he's going to block. He ends up running a bit of a post. Mariota throws him the football, catch and run, which is his skill. It's what he did in college. It's why he got drafted just outside of the top 50. And he rumbled for 36 yards. Kedric Golston, Ben Sinnott, it was one play. That's a flash, though. He looked like a football player. He looked like a guy who could play a little football.
Listen, I can't wait to hear Logan's take on all of that, right? I mean, he's going to deep dive that the way he came out and faked the block and how he caught it with his body and he made defenders miss. But, I'm not there when they practice, right? And they drafted this kid for a reason, right? They drafted him where they drafted him at for a reason, right? And one thing we have to always kind of remind ourselves is right there, sometimes there's a little bit of development or something that has to switch in order for your ability to show on Sundays. We knew what he was in college, right? But sometimes they kind of got to find his way in a world where you're trying to get Debo integrated in the offense, and Ertz just came out, right? And what is his special teams load and so on and so forth. So, in a nutshell, yeah, you want to throw him the ball a lot more because you invested that draft capital in it. But the most important thing was that he caught it, he broke tackles, and he made an explosive play happen. And so hopefully that 1 turns into 5, that 5 turns into 9. And we're talking about how, the first part of this year was just a blip on the radar. And now he's, one of the better tight ends in the league going out there playing at a high level like we all thought he was going to be when they took him where they took him.
Yeah, I'm actually excited too to dive into the all 22 and get at Logan's eval, but also just rewatch him in the run game because that's also pretty important. I could sit here and get upset about 1 target and 1 catch, but this was a much bigger role for him, especially with the Ertz injury. Colson Yankoff was seen on the sideline getting treatment after a special teams play, got hurt in the second half. And so in the run game where they actually had success and did some good things, I would think he was asked to do a lot of things, even maybe in a larger role than he typically is. So I'm curious to see how that grades out for him. But I have been a broken record on this. I will be a broken record. Like 1 target for him down the stretch will not work for me. Let's figure this thing out. How big of a priority does tight end need to be? Is it a want or a need? Ertz, with the torn ACL especially, will not be back, but probably because of his age and contract status, wasn't going to be a part of the plans anyway. Do you feel good about Sinnott as a tight end too? Find out what he's good at and what he's not in the passing game so that you can get someone that complements him and maybe someone that's a fit with what he does so that there's a harmonious situation in the room. Like I want to use these games to make sure that guys like him are getting their ops, right? I talked about this with Bill. If you're divvying up 27 carries between he and McNichols, I'd like it to be more than 66% to 33%. Moving forward. Now, I understand there's different roles. You mentioned pass pro. McNichols is out there in the gun, 2-minute, 4-minute offense, and he's going to get some gun carries because of that. But I'd like to see Bill get some of those tests as well. Jalen Lane got 1 uncatchable target in the red zone. Maybe he gets a couple looks. Traylon Burks had the huge, unbelievable, incredible catch that everybody talked about in the end zone against Denver. We basically haven't heard from him since. He got a couple targets that weren't overly catchable in this game. So, those are the types of guys I'd like to see more from. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball that's near and dear to your heart, Kedric. Start with the fact that they finally got a takeaway. There have been 8 games out of the 13 prior to today where they didn't have one. The Sandra-Still interception was pretty, and Quan Martin almost picked off a pass, jumped around in the end zone. That was really nice, too. I thought they did a much better job just playing lanes. We said Dart was going to give you some ops. He certainly did. And at least in Sandra-Still's case, for the 4th time this year, he took advantage.
Yeah, I mean, that turnover was huge. I think just from the mentality of they practice turnovers, they work on all those different drills, so on and so forth. And so you're excited for them. You know what I mean? At times the defense looked really well, and then at other times, there were some creases in the run game. You know what I mean? That I think has to be fixed. You know what I mean? Like you have to be able to stop the run with the guys that they have, with the coaching that they're getting. It just has to happen. You know what I mean? They got, too many good football players on that side of the ball to kind of give up some of the lanes that they're giving up, right? And you saw some of the same stuff even with, the running back catching the ball on Wagner, right? Like that was a heck of a throw, a heck of a catch. Bobby had him covered. And it's just kind of one of those things where people are going to say, oh, he's this and he's that. Well, no, he's still a really productive football player that somebody happened to catch the ball on him. So they made plays when they needed to that late in the game, stopping them on 4th and I believe it was 4th and 2. They had 4 plays inside the 1 or 5 yard line. Was really impressive. Albeit if Jameis had to come in or didn't have to come in, they did what they needed to do. You know what I mean? There's obviously room for improvement. There's room for growth. All those things y'all are going to talk about all week. At this moment, this time, that's neither here nor there. They won the football game, and we should be excited about that as Washington fans.
Yeah, totally. Are you ready to say, or is it too early, that Sandra-Still should play outside? Last year, he was really good outside. This year, it was a real struggle in the nickel. Logan and I on this pod have talked a lot about how much harder it is to play the nickel than the boundary anyway, which you can give some insight on. But, man, every time he goes outside, he just is better. And I get that it's like asking him to do an easier job. But they even said on the broadcast today, Dan Quinn told us in them sit-down that they had Like, yeah, he just makes more plays and seems to be more confident out there. Like, at what point do you just go, okay, we wanted him to be a nickel corner when we drafted him, but he's actually really good outside on the boundary. We got him. We got Trey Amos. Maybe we sign a veteran in that Jonathan Jones role, and then we go find a nickel, and that's our corner room. Or do you want to see more of him in the nickel before you make that decision?
Well, I'm a harp on NASCAR Paulsen here, right? You got guys that run that oval all the time, and when they get to those road courses, they have to bring in other drivers, right? So obviously he's way more he's way more comfortable on the outside, but he might be the best option, and obviously he's the best option to play that nickel position now, or they would have him on the outside. You see what I'm saying? So he's more natural. Obviously, when you play in that slot, that nickel, right? There's people talk about the coverage. That nickel corner is in the run fit, right? Like, you are in the run fit. You have a gap. You're responsible for that gap, because if that receiver comes in and cracks a linebacker, you have to now go fit the run, right? And as we all know, some corners, that's high stress, right? Out there on the boundary as an outside receiver, the sideline's to your back. You know what I mean? So you got an extra defender over there. You're able to kind of see more of the field to understand the feel and the route concepts. And then as far as tackling, you're kind of secondary contain type player. But if they had a guy that they could put in the nickel position, I would believe they would move him back outside. But here right now, and as we speak, they thought he has those traits that would say, hey, he would be really good at that. Sometimes people are just more natural. It's the whole right tackle, left tackle, guard, whatever, right? We've seen that here. Sometimes guys just play one position at a different level than they do the other.
It's a good point, too. Like, clearly they think he's the best in the nickel, or they wouldn't have put him there to start the year. I guess what I'm wondering about is, you got a full offseason. You're going into the hiatus now, and you got to draw up needs. And you're going to need corners either way. But do you say, all right, we need one fewer outside guy because we have Sanders still playing there, or we've got our nickel because we have Mikey there, and we're going to sign Jonathan Jones 2.0 to play outside, or what have you? And how do you account for him inside, outside? I think is what they need to figure out. A lot of us as fans are reactionary. It's why we wouldn't make good executives. I'm kind of ready to say, okay, let's just keep him outside and see what happens. But I think they know if he can play inside, there's way more value to it. I think of baseball from the standpoint of somebody who's a catcher who could move to first, like a Samuel Basayo from the Orioles organization, this big power hitter kid. He's 6'4", and people are like, well, move him to first or DH him and just get his bat in the lineup every day. Well, 27 home runs and 87 RBI or something as a DH is nice. As a catcher, it's Hall of Fame. It's elite. So if you could keep him there, there's more value. And I think they feel similarly about the ability to play the nickel. There just aren't that many guys that can do it. If he can pull it off, then it's a real coup. It's a real win for them. Who I thought had a really good game? I thought he was really noticeable was Frankie Louvu. Had a couple good pass rushes, made 5 tackles. He was out there before the game doing the no shirt bit, which I think is kind of like if you play good, I like it. And if you don't, I think it's kind of like a lot to deal with. They had me on the pregame show today, and they're like, oh, this is tired. Why is he doing this? And I'm like, I'm not going to get upset about this until he plays poorly. Then we could talk about how it was silly. But, hey, it worked. He went out there. He set the tone. He's not wearing a shirt in the cold. I think I lost you for a second. You got me, kid?
Yeah, I got you now. Yeah, no, Louvu, I mean, listen, he did what he needed to do in order to get his mind ready to play a football game. And if that means he wants to go out there like he's going to the swimming pool in the summer, by all means, go for it, right? I'm a huge fan of his. I love the way he plays the game of football. Obviously, he missed some tackles earlier on in the year, and people kind of got down on him. But you're talking about a guy that plays on the line of scrimmage as well as an off-ball linebacker. He does a lot of things for this defense. I love his energy. I love the way he is, his approach to the game. I believe he's one of those guys that is a core commander that is going to be here in the following years to have the success that we think this bunch is going to have. So, hats off to him. And then once again, you're talking about a veteran player that is still competing their tails off in a season where people will say, what are we doing here? It's a lost season.
Good point.
They're pros. They're pros, and that's one thing you can take your hat off to this organization, Dan Quinn, and all the rest of them is that they have football players in the building that are playing football because it's their job, but not only their job, you can tell they're passionate about the game. And with that passion and some tweaks and adding a few pieces and staying healthy, this bunch is going to bounce back. And it's not going to be a surprise to me because based off of everything we said, Von Miller, the way he's playing at this point in the year with 7 sacks, right? Like everybody wants Von Miller, 15, 16 sacks. Well, you take 7 sacks from a defensive lineman right now. Frankie Louvu, Larry Tunsil, Terry McLaurin, even last week with Jaden. Right now, obviously they still had a shot to be in the playoffs when they got on a run, but these guys want to play football for one another. And somebody that was in that locker room, you can X and O till you blue in the face, right? If you don't have guys, because everybody has talent in this league. Some people have more than others, but when you have guys that care about the game and care about one another, those are good football teams.
Kedric Golston in for Logan Paulsen. Take command. Commanders beat the Giants. Hang 29, win 29-21, get the special teams touchdown from Jalen Lane, get a big rushing day from Bill. We're talking about the defense right now. I thought they rushed the quarterback pretty well in this game. Javon Kinlaw had a TFL, got up the field. Jeremy Reeves in the run game had a TFL, as did Von Miller. Preston Smith did too. But in terms of quarterback hits, Igbenogany hit the QB on a blitz from the nickel. Von Miller had 2 quarterback hits on back-to-back plays, including a sack. Preston Smith hit the arm of Jackson Dart on an incompletion. Got guy that, his style of play, the way Jacob Martin has rushed the quarterback, played up front physically, he's a guy I want around here. He signed a 1-year deal for, on the cheap. I'd like to bring him back next year and make him a fixture in the rotation. Ideally, he's, probably like instead of being a starter, your third. 7 or 8 hits on the quarterback. He had 3 of them.
Yeah, no, I mean, shout out Preston Smith. Preston was a guy who was a young player when I was here. Still making plays. Preston, if you listen to this, you're now the new Unc. There's no more Uncle Kid. There's Uncle Preston. You now hit Unc status. But Martin, I love the way he plays, the passion, the energy. You talking about a guy that is looking for a home. Hopefully he finds one here because his production, whether he's, rotational or starting, right? He's shown he can go out there and make football plays. Kinlaw, he flashes every single week. You know what I mean? Rushing the passer. Dart's going to give you chances. He holds the ball. He'll scramble a lot, right? So he's going to give you chances to get after him. But it was good because we've come in here some weeks and talk about where is the D-line at, right? And they show a presence in a win, and I'm excited for them because this is a hard business when you're losing. So I take my hat off to them for winning this football game because I know they're working hard to do it.
Yeah, Preston Smith's playing his best ball of the year the last few games. There's no doubt. You're going to call Monk. I like that. But yeah, the old man now, which is funny to say. We're all getting old. He's starting to finishing strong. I think he's just starting to get his sea legs under him. Remember, he came in the middle of the season. I don't know what kind of workouts he was doing or what kind of shape he's in, but that takes a little time, gets into the flow of the defense, and you're starting to see the production from him. One guy we should just mention really quickly, who's a lesser name on this team. He's been kind of pinballing from the practice squad to the active roster. Antonio Hamilton, wears number 34. He was heavily involved today at corner. I love when guys get opportunities, Kedric, and they do what he did, where he was physical. He was handsy. Like he got called for a penalty once, maybe could have been called for another, but I will take this. He competed his butt off. There were multiple plays down the field where he's in phase, step for step with a receiver. For a team, think about watching the Commanders, the number of guys who have run free, been beaten, the number of guys who make good money, who are trailing dudes by yards. He had really tight coverage all day long. Like he's on the phone, I'm sure, with his mom, his girlfriend, his agent tonight, and he is feeling good. That steak dinner he's going to eat when he gets back to Ashburn is going to taste like $1 million. He helped himself in terms of his career today. just competing. I loved what I saw from him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You talking about a guy, like you said, been up and down on the roster, but he made the most of those reps when he was on the practice squad. You talking about a guy that probably was on the scout team going against Jaden, McLaurin, Debo, all those guys, right? Giving them a great look. And that's what gave Dan Quinn and them the confidence to bring him up and put him in that situation based off of what they saw in practice. You know what I mean? And here's a guy that made the most of his opportunity. He's probably been practicing at a high clip and earned some more playing time. And we've all seen
kind of out of necessity because, like, think about it. You got no Lattimore, you got no Amos. Now you lose Jonathan Jones. It's just like there's nobody left. They might not even want it. They're just like, all right, we'll try 34. That makes it that much more impressive, I think.
Well, they had an option. You know, I mean, obviously this late in the season, but there's a reason they put him out there. They could have signed somebody off the street or somebody else off of somebody else's practice squad. So, you know, this is a lesson for all people, right? Young players, young football players, right? Everybody wants an opportunity, but what do they do with that opportunity? And that young fella today went out there and competed his tail off, and hopefully had a ton of fun doing it, and is going to be able to earn more opportunities the rest of this year.
Kedric Golston, Grant Paulsen on Take Command. All right, one last thing. Jalen Lane with the punt returns. He had a 20-yard rate, a 63-yarder, and that touchdown, as you look back at this thing, because of the 2 missed field goals by the Giants, was legitimately the difference in the ball game. This is his second return touchdown of the season. There's been some inconsistencies at receiver. In fact, Cliff Kingsbury, talking at the podium this week, the offensive coordinator, said as much, called it an up-and-down season for Jalen Lane as a wide receiver. But as a punt returner, now with 2 touchdowns, including the big one in this game, I think you found your guy. I think you found your return man for the future here, and somebody who over the long haul is going to be able to execute that role. I just like how quickly he gets up the field. There was no wasted movement on both of those 220-plussers today. He was downhill and making people miss with shiftiness, making people miss with speed right at him. I lose you, Ked, or are you back? I don't think Ked can hear me. Ked,
I cannot hear you, but can you hear me?
I hear you.
So if you're talking about landing those punt returns, I mean, you're talking about 80 yards, right? That's 8 first downs, right? And you add the 8 first downs with a touchdown. I mean, it's back-breaking momentum type plays. I mean, nobody, yeah, we don't see punt returns every week and everybody gets caught up in that. But for him to equate for 80-plus yards, right, that is huge production. Like I said, that's 8 first downs. Any offensive coordinator, anybody would say, hey, here's 8 first downs in the hidden yardage game, right? And that's really when you talk about the difference, because when you look at all the other statistics, you know, Washington didn't lead in a lot of the other stuff, right? But those hidden yardage, as far as the kicking game goes, really paid off dividends in this win.
Moving forward, I do want to see a little more out of Ben Sinnott. I'd like to see Jake Moody get tested as well, the kicker, who the Commanders had a chance to ask to boot a 55-yarder and chose not to in this game. I'd like to see some tests for him just to see if he could pass those to possibly be the kicker going into next season and continue to feed the ball with Chris Rodriguez coming back to Bill. I don't want to see necessarily no Chris Rodriguez, but I think Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt getting his confidence back, showing something today, is the highest ceiling back that they have. So I'd like to see him get more work. Also, Treylon Burks has been uninvolved last couple of weeks. Sure would be nice to see him get some targets in the passing game as well. The big question is, will we see Jaden Daniels again this season? We'll get more intel on that early in the week. Speaking of which, we've got a Tuesday pod breaking down all the specifics from the Commanders and the Giants, and then a Thursday pod where we'll be looking ahead to the Eagles, who just blew out the Raiders today, absolutely annihilated Vegas, 31-0 by the same score Washington got shut out and lost to the Vikings by last week. Eagles, Cowboys, Eagles to wind down the season. Saturday game this coming week, then Christmas Day, and then they wrap things up in Week 18 against the Eagles. Big thanks to Kedric Golston. I'm Grant Paulsen saying so long for our producer, Evan O'Brien. Thanks for checking us out on Take Command. Make sure you watch the pod on YouTube on 106.7 and Team 980 channels. Listen wherever you get your audio. We'll be back on Tuesday with more Take Command.